Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, possibly even good night to you from all around the world. It's great to see you in the chat, telling us where you are dialing in from. It's truly an international group, and we're thrilled to have you join us here for the latest in our Innovation at Work webinar series brought to you by MIT Sloan Executive Education. This is our deep dive format, so we'll be together for the next hour exploring today's topic. Once again, I'm Peter Hurst, the Senior Associate Dean for Executive Education at the MIT Sloan School, and my role in today's webinar really is to introduce you to our two extraordinary panelists today. And then we're going to really have a fascinating conversation between them. And I think the opportunity for all of you to certainly comment in the chat as the conversation goes on. I'll be keeping an eye on those to see if there's any opportunities to throw some questions later on to our speakers. But if you want a question to ask specifically, please do use the Q&A button on Zoom here. That will really help us to make sure that we get through as many questions as we can and organize that. So we mean this to be interactive. Please do keep the chat going, but also any questions, put them in the Q&A. So today it is just a pleasure and a great privilege to be joined by a colleague from the MIT Sloan School, Senior Lecturer Hal Gregersen. Many of you know Hal for his prolific teaching in our executive education programs, as well as his really groundbreaking leadership in research and writings on innovation and leadership. And I'm sure he'll be sharing some of his latest ideas and thoughts about that during the course of today's conversation. We're also joined by Peter Åberg. Now, Peter is a participant from our executive education programs who, in fact, in process of earning an executive certificate, one of multiple executive certificates that he's earned with us, took one of Hal's courses. And as he will talk about later, I think this had quite a profound effect on Peter. However, what you're also going to hear is that Peter's been on an extraordinary journey of his own, which we're really honored that he chose to spend some of that journey with us at MIT, and we're pleased that we've been able to help him along that. But we're really looking forward to hearing, Peter, more about your whole story and how your interactions with Hal and the executive education program have really helped you in that journey. But I won't say any more than that because I think everyone will really get the most hearing this from you. So with that, let me hand over, I think, first of all, to Hal, who may have some sort of opening remarks, and then we'll get the conversation going.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Peter. We here at MIT are truly honored to have Peter Åberg with us today. And as I've thought about having this conversation today, it's been humbling in a lot of ways to learn about Peter's life and his story and the intersection of his work and life with the power of questions in our lives. I honestly believe that when we're living and leading and working on the edge of uncertainty, there are no answers. That's the whole point. And questions become a superpower, a tool to help us navigate through those unknown territories, again, both at work and in life. And in today's world with generative AI, it's even more complicated in a very positive and sometimes negative way. And in some recent research that we did here at MIT, we found that if you and I simply engage with some form of generative AI or other AI tools in a significant way, our question velocity goes up, our question variety goes up, our question novelty and value goes up. And we also put ourselves in conditions by engaging with the technology to actually be a little more wrong intellectually. Our mental maps may be being exposed to things that aren't quite right, being surprised emotionally and uncomfortable at times, and being actually reflectively quiet more than we normally are, and strategic in our thinking and our approach to the world. And so that's kind of the dynamic that's going on. And we've had the chance to interview leaders, 200 plus leaders that are in some ways like Peter Åberg, whom we'll talk with today, but these leaders actively seek passive data. For example, the CEO of Uber recently was concerned about the driver experience and literally was asked by the head of their driver routine kind of group to get out and get in a car. So he literally started delivering on a bike Uber Eats, and then he bought a used car and signed up and became a driver. And the insights gained to make that driver experience better for Uber were exponential in nature and size and impact, because the CEO of Uber actually put himself in conditions where he was wrong and he was uncomfortable, and he was very reflective about it. And then he did something about the new questions that were emerging. So that's some of what we talk about in these courses at MIT around the power of questions. And Peter's had the chance to be involved with us, and we've had the chance to be involved with him as a participant. So Peter, here's my sort of question and introduction. First, from my perspective, thank you enormously for joining us today from the land of the sun, up in the north. Thank you.
Thank you, Hal.
And, you know, you and I have talked about the power of conditions or contexts that provoke us, cause us to ask questions that we otherwise wouldn't ask. And again, it might be artificial intelligence, it might be everyday routines, but you've had some pretty significant experiences where, in fact, you were put in those conditions involuntarily and profound things happened. Would you mind sharing your thoughts on that?
I'm happy to do that, Hal. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And 2011, it was 24th of August. You know, I was getting ready for an amazing day at work, and I was bicycling, you know, to the office in my suit and tie and shirt. I bicycled like 5 miles an hour, and suddenly my bicycle broke down, and I fell with head first in asphalt without wearing a bicycle helmet. And from that event, you know, I received a spinal cord injury, disc hernia, whiplash, and my entire brain became what my neurologist said, yeah, Peter, you got an earthquake, you know, brain injury. So asking questions, you know, I was not able to ask a question at all. I was not able to speak at all. You know, I couldn't, you know, take a fork, eat pasta, and I couldn't say my own word. I couldn't say my own name, and my entire head was spinning around. So I was so used in my professional life, you know, to ask questions, to be very interactive, you know, together with my staff, my management team. But suddenly I was captured within my own brain, not being able to speak what I was supposed to think in the questions that I had. Wow. So coming from being very active questioning, coming to not being active at all, not being able to speak at all, really profoundly resets your entire way of thinking. We always think that we will be, you know, healthy, you know, we'll be able to work as we are, we have our career path set. But suddenly the question comes, when can I be able to eat my own food? Can I ever be able to work again? And then when you hear your doctors after several weeks telling you, Peter, yeah, maybe you'll be able to work in a park. You might never be able to work in a full-time situation again. You might never be able to work in front of a computer again. So that was a really, really life-changing thing where questions became very different.
Quick question, Peter, about that. I can't imagine that silence in one sense and so much going on in your head. And you mentioned some of the questions you were asking. What was one of the more powerful questions that you asked when you were literally just talking to yourself? And what was one of the questions somebody else asked you that may have been helpful or impactful?
You can say that when I had a lot of questions of myself, And I was capturing my own brain, so I was not able to communicate. You know, if I was thinking, my name is Peter, I was saying repetitive p, or saying something else. And I had a difficulty in my brain in the first 4 months, even to capture words. And you can say the biggest question I had, not being able to communicate at all outside of my body, was, you know, how will my life be? I think that was some of the first questions that I had. When uncertainty brings to a question to your life, when you had everything that is certain becoming uncertain. And that became one of the biggest questions, you know, how will my life be when I didn't have the certainty of how it would be? When it comes to, you know, odds that were given to me, I had some doctors that actually said to me, Peter, we never know how your life might be. You might never. So those kind of questions or statements with a negativity part sparkled a lot of, you know, energy or, you know, negative energy in my brain, thinking, am I just captured in my body? Will I never? And I learned, you know, that nothing is never. It's just uncertainty right now. Uncertainty comes when life progresses, so to say. And what I have learned from that initial thinking of, you know, my injury is that it's not important. It's not only important with your personal health, it is also important with the health of your team, you know, to make sure that you create the content in your team setting to be able to ask questions and to be open. For example, I'm a strong believer of having, you know, to ask everybody a question. And if I may reflect a little bit to your course, Hal, when it comes to, you know, get out of the office statement that we had in one of the, you know, episodes in your 6-week course, is that what I reflect a lot upon is the importance of get out of the office thing, because as a managing director, you should not hide in your office. You should not hide in the management team. You should be out with the customers. You should be out with every employee. And every employee should have, you know, the conditions to say, Peter, this doesn't work. This doesn't work at all. This has never worked. And something that, and I was very new as MD, Hal, when I took your course and had a lot of questions. And that one made me reflect, you know, get out, be visible, because if you're not visible with the team, they don't feel the trust to be able to ask the questions. And you only get the best answers from people who are, you know, really out there facing the customer every day, facing, you know, the production thing every day. And I also reflected upon, you know, the conditions of having good questions is the ability for the manager to say thank you, you know, when someone gives an input. You know, and if the manager says thank you, even though it's a question that goes straight through you, is a good criticism, you know, all questions are good questions. And to be able to be uncomfortable wrong, as you also said, you know, to ask as many questions as you can. And I came from a finance background, becoming MD of a production sales force. And I dared to ask a lot of uncomfortable questions. And I could ask the same, maybe stupid questions to a lot of people, and I get maybe different answers. Yeah. So from the conditions setting of your course there, I learned a lot. And from my personal injury, you know, to create health in the team, health with the individual, health in the group, to create an openness. That is how I want to create, you know, a connection between the personal life and the management life and your course.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, when you described that, Peter, I was thinking of a good friend and colleague, Amy Edmondson, over at Harvard Business School, who's written a lot about psychological safety. And one of the steps in that process of building psychological safety is what you just said, and that is expressing gratitude when someone asks you a tough question, expressing gratitude when the conditions are ripe for for myself to be really wrong and uncomfortable. And when that data comes in that tells me that, it's actually a huge gift, I think, is what you're saying underneath it. And that act of gratitude is a powerful way to not only express thankfulness of the person in the moment, but it also opens a brighter pathway, I think, towards deeper, richer, more productive conversations in the future.
I fully agree, Hal. And when you can also connect a little bit connection also to my other accident is that when I couldn't speak, for 4 months, it was just some words.
Okay.
Then I was speaking very slowly,
Yeah.
And usually I'm a very energetic person. I go straight to the point and in. But during my injury, I couldn't speak fast, and I had to be slow, and I had to really think what the other person was talking about in order to process it in my brain. And sometimes just to say my name is Peter took 30 seconds. Yeah. And when I took your course, I think this course was very good because you had the 6 weeks, of different weeks, and you make a lot of reflection on your own time. And one thing I want to connect to this is to say, how can I express it? To say, stop, Peter, listen, don't interrupt. And that is something for your course, be quiet. Also, so connecting my learnings from the accident, I have to listen. Then when you became better, you maybe go back to your own trait. But if you don't stop and be quiet and be uncomfortable quiet, maybe more than 7, 8, 9 seconds, then you stop the creativity of the team talking about things. So rather to, just to express a lot of questions to people, I have to listen. The team have to listen. And you have to let the people have their space, respect their feelings and input to each questions, and never to interrupt until, my teammate has done something. So that's something I have to learn and think about already today. I made some mistakes today also.
Well, and that's where, I was just, I'm a photographer also. It's sort of another part of my life and always has been. And there's this notion of you make a composition like that photograph of Mount Kilimanjaro behind you, and then you wait for something interesting to happen, a bird flying into the scene or people walking across the terrain in front of you. And as I work with executives trying to teach them how to do that photographically, the hardest part is not the composition. It's the waiting part. And I think in your situation, a very unfortunate accident forced you to be quiet, forced you to wait more for information coming in. And at least I remember Deval Patrick, who used to be the governor here in Massachusetts, and now he's doing social investment, but he said, when I ask a question, it's not the first 3 seconds of quiet that I get the really important information. It's usually seconds 4 through 7, 8, and 9. If I'm quiet that long, that person is weighing and judging whether I'm really worthy of getting that information. And then when it comes, it often is crucial to some initiative or challenge that we're working on. So I really appreciate the way you're framing that, and that notion of stepping back, which another tool, in addition to creating these conditions, another tool that we had talked about in the course, and you and I have talked about before this session today, is what we call a question journey. And I'm not sure if it's possible, Eric, can you show that question journey slide real quickly for people? Is that doable?
Yep, absolutely. You got it.
There are 2 of them. Just show the first one first.
Yep.
And go to the next one, please.
Yep.
It's that notion of reflecting back on our journey with questions over the course of our lives, and how did authority figures respond to tough, challenging questions, and how psychologically safe was that environment? So when Peter was going through the course and others, and I've done it myself, it's like stepping back about our journey. For example, memories about childhood, school 5 through 18 years old, K through 12 in the US, university technical training, the next slide, please. And then going to our first major professional role, first major managerial role, and first role now. If we just step back and take a look at how safe were those contexts, how fearless was I in my inquiry, it can often tell us a lot about whether we're speaking up in meetings today or not. I mean, I happen to grow up in a family where my father, for a lot of reasons, was the center of the world, and it was dangerous to ask questions in our home. And it wasn't until graduate school that I ended up having a teacher that actually valued that put me down a very different path in the role of inquiry in my life. And so it's something any of us can do, and it has powerful effects on the way in which we ask or don't ask questions today. Thank you, Eric. You can pop that off now. But Peter, you know, in your experience, in your life, maybe doing the course as well, has your question journey influenced the way in which you ask questions today? And if so, how?
I used, you know, some of one technique when I go, for example, when you know, our commitments and our keystone questions and shadow questions and purpose. And I was very new as MD, and you know, I have a lot of thoughts, you know, from production to sales, and I was, you know, trying to narrow down, you know, my questions in order to focus on the right things. So I started, you know, with some of Hal's techniques when it comes to my business, the strategy, the key customers, what should I do, what should I not do, and then at the same time also you reflect on your personal life as well as on the professional life. And I started to look into the customer journey. I was starting to think of I should be out much more, you know, with the customers, listen, asking questions. But then also, you know, the personal reflection of family life also came, you know, within, you know, narrowing down the questions. And I started to think, you know, in my last question, I think I need to be out more with the customers. I need to listen. But my 10th and final step was, how can I help people to have the best life possible? You know, and to have that question in the end, how can I help people to have the best life impossible if they report to me or my friends around me? It also comes back to the listen. You know, we have a professional life, and then everything is about people. And if you listen to your people and to listen to your team members' ups and downs in the life stories, if they're willing to share about it, you learn about it. And learning more and asking questions about your peers, you know, your management team members. When you're out on the shop floor, you know, talk with one of my amazing employees, Emil, you know, who's doing a deducting processing machine, you know, asking questions about the life stories. That's what everything is about. And if you know more about the life stories, your company's journeys, your ups and downs, your peaks and valleys, asking questions about them, being quiet, reflecting about them, that is a very powerful tool going forward. And when I was injured, and my doctors told me you would never, 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 you know, I started also to reflect a little bit upon my life story, connecting Hal to what you just showed on the PowerPoint, you know, your childhood. And I was bullied for 9 years in school. And it started in first grade, you know, when I'm smiling, you know, I'm squeezing my eyes a little bit. I was called many bad names. You know, I was not invited to birthday parties from 3rd grade. My English teacher in junior high told me with my English proficiency, you know, I would be fit enough to be a potato picker. You know, another teacher bullied me, a lot of physical and mental bullying, you know, going on in the first 9 years. So I became very shy, you know, introvert, and I didn't dare to ask questions. And then after high school, I had a dream. You know, I wanted to, you know, go to United States. But how can I come to United States if my English teacher tells me that my English proficiency is like a potato picker? That was her version. So I was combining something that I really loved, basketball, together with the English language. It was one of my, you know, drawbacks. And I applied for, you know, a United States camp, a YMCA camp. And I got accepted as a head basketball director. And I only applied as an assistant basketball director. And I sent a fax to Chuck Hayward at YMCA Camp Tuck Rock 1996 and told him, Chuck, thank you for hiring me as head basketball coach, but I only want to become assistant coach. I don't dare to take that step. And then when it comes to questions, I think Chuck, he wrote back to me within 10 minutes with a fax, and he told me, Peter, I'm sitting here across the Atlantic. I had never met you. I believe in you. You are the closest to yourself, and you don't believe in yourself. Peter, trust in yourself. Dare to come over, and I will help you to reflect. Thanks to Chuck Hayward, that was the first step to my journey to become more open and ask more questions, to have a manager who saw something in me, to ignite a spark in me that I didn't see in myself, with quite a provocative question, don't you know yourself? And then when he came over, I came out to the United States, Chuck really fulfilled his promise to help me to gain more confidence. So asking good questions, even though they are provocative, can also help a person, to grow into new things. So looking back into life stories, Chuck really, made my life. Then it also comes, so some on your PowerPoint slide there with your professional life, reflecting back to, your life peaks and valleys, due to the bullying, I also became quite, extremely tunnel-minded, I need to achieve goals, because suddenly when I did my master's in business administration, I got a very good career in the beginning, I became very narrow-minded. And I think that's because reflecting about a question that I did in Hal's course also, looking at your life story, I wanted to show, me, show my bulliers that I was good. But if you're just showing me, that becomes quite a toxic team environment, so to say. So it's also good to reflect upon yourself as a manager, Also look maybe into a 360-degree, evaluation and ask your peers, your manager, start reporting to you, how you're perceived, and dare to be quiet and listen.
Wow.
And you learn many, many things. So I think questions from your life stories, your teams, yourself, your families, you can learn so many, many things about yourself and how to go forward.
And Peter, one of the things that you're reminding me of is the power of question mentors in the course of our life. And I mentioned that professor in my graduate school, his name was Bonner Ritchie. And everybody was afraid of Bonner because he made you think for yourself. And he expected that. And few of us had really done that before in our lives. So I'll never forget, halfway through this semester-long course, writing a paper, finishing it at 2:00 in the morning, pushing back from the typewriter. Yes, I was doing it on a typewriter then, and finishing this paper and thinking to myself, I don't really care what Bonner thinks about this paper. I learned something really important and his evaluation doesn't matter, which is exactly what Bonner wanted me to be thinking. Now, because he wanted me to be asking my own questions and getting my own insights. And that's what the whole point was, that, and doing something about them. And the beautiful thing about Bonner is, two quick stories. One is, he was one time driving through Germany on the Autobahn with his family. And as they passed the exit, he realized they should have gotten off, but didn't. The next exit was 70 kilometers down. He didn't want to drive that far. So he looked between the two sides of the road, the grass median in between. Nobody coming either way or going either way, completely empty highway. So he pulled over to just turn around across the grass and go back the other way. As he turned into the grass, his car started to roll and then completely turned upside down because they had mowed the grass level, but it was a big gully. So now he's sitting upside down in his Volvo car with his wife and two kids in the back seat, wife in the front, kids in the back seat. He looks and notices they're all hanging upside down. Nobody's hurt. And I heard from his children, here's the first thing Bonner said. This is interesting. what could we learn from this? And like, that's unbelievable. That's really how he approached it. And he was just a master questioner, but he invited and mentored other people to do that. But for him, it was a combination of intellectual inquiry with deep empathy. And I'll never forget, graduate school finished, 2 years in the master's program. We were cleaning our apartment to move the next day, and a knock on the door. I opened it. Bonner was standing there with rubber gloves, a scrub brush, and a bucket. And he said, Hal, how can I help you clean your house? Very few full professors would ever do that. But that's Bonner, you know, it's like his head, heart, and hands were completely into the situation because he cared about questions. So thank you on that journey piece, Peter. And I invite all of us, especially those who are listening, to really consider the great question mentors in your life and how might you and I be even better at that with other people.
Okay, so just 1 minute with one of my mentors, Lars Henriksson. He's so dear to he was my boss, my mentor, and my friend. And when I started to report it to him, he said, Peter, you have been sitting in the head office for many, many years. You know many things, but actually you don't know anything. So now you have to go out and travel to the sales companies and ask as many questions as you want. That's how you learn. Just a short reflection to how mentors really can help you in life.
Thank you, Peter. So there's this notion of these conditions that were talked about in this question journey. And Eric, if you could show the question burst slide, please. There's another tool that we used in that course that, and again, in our conversation, Peter, I've learned that you use it often. And it's the following, which is basically, imagine you've got a challenge, imagine you're stuck. It's the question burst slide. Thank you. And you could do it yourself, or you could do it with somebody else, like I could do it with Peter right now, but we take a brief amount of time, 2 minutes, to share our challenge. And then Peter and I, in this case, would generate as many questions as we can in 3 minutes, which would be like 15 questions. We don't answer any of the questions. We don't explain why we're asking the questions. We just generate those questions. And what we've discovered with this process is that 85% of the time, people feel better about themselves and the challenge after this process of just asking questions. They've reframed the challenge. They have at least one new idea, and it actually helps them make progress to start moving forward. So Peter and I had talked about that power of creating space is important for new questions to emerge. And what this process does in a disciplined, systematic way is it forces us to stop talking like we normally do. We can't give answers. We have to shut up. We have to let that space of answers being let go where more questions come in. And, you know, I'd love to hear, Peter, any of your thoughts about this process. And if we had time, maybe we'll do a 2-minute question burst about one of your challenges or something. But it's like, what was your response when you initially heard and, you know, were exposed to this? And has it proven helpful for you?
I have tried it in a few settings. And the last time I tried to, tried it out was in the UK with my very good team there. And we decided to do it, in a conference room. And it was first very strange feeling, I feel, because people, when we started to explain the process for people who have not heard it before, it was, why shouldn't we do the answers? Mm-hmm. And when we started to do the question burst on a question, people started to get into the habit of answering the questions. So then you had to be like a little bit of moderating in the beginning, and then once we felt comfortable of, that we should not answer the questions, we started with the question saying, why do we need to work overtime? And then we came into people, we came into systems, IT, processes, and then we after a few minutes of talking about a lot of the things, we start to think of, okay, the most questions we had, we wrote up each questions was about IT and things. So then we took a second round of questions into the IT matter of the quote to order process. And then we pinpointed a few other things that we, in the end, attached a few questions to. So I think it was uncomfortable at first with the team, but we got used to it. So I think it's important to set the scene in the beginning, and also to dare to correct if it comes to a solution kind of thing.
So I think we can do this in the chat. I'm trying to think of the challenge that we could all just do a quick 30 seconds, put a bunch of questions in there. If you have one, Peter, maybe you could share it. Or if I've got one.
Okay. It can be everything from how, how can I help my fellow peer today with a task. It can be everything about what stops, or why do I work overtime, for example, or
I've got one. So 2 days from now, I'm having my left hip replaced. And from everything that I know, it's a relatively routine surgery. And yet I find myself worried about being the exceptional case where something goes wrong and I lose my ability to walk or to walk comfortably or whatever it might be. So here's my challenge. How can I approach that surgery in a way that my worries can be reduced in a healthy way? And I think if I do that, I won't, I'll be able to recover better. It's just going to be a better process from start to finish. So my challenge is, how do I let go of some of those probably overly concerned worries? That's my challenge, folks. In the chat, no answers. Don't tell me what to do. Just type in the chat questions I should ask myself that would help me make progress on that challenge in the next 2 days. Can you do that? Thank you for starting the thing, Stephanie. They're great questions. I could keep going, but you've already, there's one question that jumps out. Like, what am I afraid of? And it's pretty relevant, Peter, to your world. If I think and listen to my heart, I'm afraid of losing my ability to walk. That's what I'm afraid of. And all the implications of that in my mind's eye. Peter, what would you add to that? Or what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about my fear?
You can say that life always takes you in certain kind of ways. Sometimes life takes us up, sometimes down, sometimes in a complete different direction that is really unexpected. And when life takes you into an expected or unexpected way, it is life ways to showing this is your path. And then I have two things. I think believe in yourself, your family, and your team, and also reflect together with yourself, your family, and your team, depending on the path where your life takes you after the surgery, and to ask questions about, what, depending on what, life will take you. But belief, and you know, reflection are two very important things. I for myself know from learning how to walk and talk all over again. Doctors told me never, never, never. You know, it took me several months. I did 300 feet, 500 feet with support sticks. 4.5 years later, you know, I completed New York City Marathon walking with support sticks faster than 7,000 runners. You know, 8 years after the accident in 2019, I could still not swim. So I found a hemorrhoid, you know, a pillow that made a floating device. So I could float on my back 1.5 kilometer, bicycle indoor in the gym and walk. So I did an Olympic triathlon, you know. And so whatever life brings you, whatever things you might have lose, you can still think of the abilities you have. You know, you can speak, you can see your grandchild, you can see your wife, and think how much family really matters, you know.
Peter, thank you. And thanks to everyone for your questions. I'm going to look through those later in more depth. But this process we just did, let me tell you a couple of things from me that just happened. I feel better about the situation already. I feel more connected to Peter than I did before this process. And even though you're distant and far on that chat, I feel appreciative and connected to you as well. And what I've learned, and we've learned through the research on this question-based process, is the act of doing it actually increases human connection and increases a sense of psychological safety. Amy Edmondson and I are doing some work on that, and it's like stepping back, not telling people what to do, asking good questions, caring about their challenge, invites us into each other's world. And thank you for coming into mine.
Thank you. And also it's important also, you can say that when it comes to, you never know when life changes. You know, so the bicycle accident, I had one other thing. In March 2013, you know, I was sitting on a Lufthansa flight, Lufthansa 499, and we got fire in the cockpit in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You know, so while you see the flight attendants in tears, ripping down the curtains, preparing for emergency landing if we might reach a source, you know, your heart starting to bounce, you know, you're looking at the picture of a wife and daughter, you know. What kind of questions do you actually ask yourself on a burning airplane? And everything what I reflected upon is about life purpose. What should you do differently? If I only land, I will be not working overtime with more of my wife, daughter. If I only land, and I thought about a lot of the mistakes I have done as a manager. I have done hundreds of mistakes, you know. So, but you shouldn't have to sit on a burning airplane to ask you questions about your daily life. You should ask your questions already today, as you've proven some, you know, with the question burst. And I reached a big goal 2021. I was a motivational speaker for the Swedish Football Federation. So then I had like a goal emptiness. I was a very goal driven. You know, that was in August 21, and I took Hal's course around, you know, that thing. So I used some of Hal's techniques to create a new purpose. So I started with a professional thing, and once again, I reached a personal thing in the end. So I was thinking, how can I gain new heights? So then I decided here in the background, on the 11th anniversary of my accident, 2022, 24th of August, I flew down to Tanzania, and together with the team, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro to raise money for children with cancer. And my injured neck, you know, I'm constantly reminded about it. Right now, I'm very reminded about it. So I can still not throw a tennis ball. I cannot jump, but together with an amazing team that gives you energy, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And that was actually, Hal, thank you very much for that question thing that I had in the course, higher purpose, you know, higher purpose, higher Kilimanjaro height, not only focus on individual goal, climb the mountain, but do it for someone else, children with cancer. So when I had some downs, which I had on the peak, on the mountain, you think of the children that you're aiming for. And to support them really gives you a lot of energy. So helping others, I think, is the best lesson of life. How can I help you? How can I help my team and everybody? Questions are the answers now.
No, Peter, that's just, to me, it's just so inspirational. When I had the chance with David Brashears, the mountaineer and cinematographer, to trek up to Everest Base Camp and then ascend into the Khumbu Icefall with him, it was just a profound experience at so many different levels. And I can imagine you in my mind's eye with your team, because it takes a team, going up that mountain behind you. And it's an exhausting, physically demanding process. And for you, I can't even imagine it. But by the end of it, you're a different person. And I think you also probably were asking different questions by the end of it.
A lot, and also to meet the fantastic people in Tanzania. And Tanzania, they respect everybody. They are so open-minded of everything. And I'm still in contact with Bongo. He's the local team leader. I'm still in contact with Dennis, my personal Sherpa. He's brother African. And we're talking a lot about different things. So you meet so many friends by exploring life and exploring what life opportunities gives to you. And friends, those are very important.
There's somebody that I actually read decades ago, the initial part of his work, Edward Dietschy. He does a lot of work on intrinsic motivation, a book called Why Do We Do What We Do, a powerful book. And he has this theory called self-determination theory, but underneath that are three elements that are questions that are really cool. Like in our interaction, Peter, is what we're doing and my questions I'm asking you and the things we're doing, am I increasing your sense of autonomy and independence? Am I increasing your sense of competence and capability? And by what I'm doing and asking, am I increasing the connection or the strength of our relationship? And as I hear you talk about your Kilimanjaro team, it sounds like they were centered on Dietschy's self-determination, which is how can we help Peter be more autonomous, be more competent, and be more connected? Is that kind of how it felt?
It felt just like that, the sense of pure heart, of friendliness, when they also check in on you every day. 3, 4, 5 people check in on you. They observe you to see how you feel coping up the higher heights, and the endurances that you have, creating the team. So the local team really helped us. And when you meet we were a group of 14 people and 7 of us came up. And to meet and form as a group within such a short time, being so open, we had a clear goal. We wanted to come up. And we helped each other to inspire. We got to learn a lot about each other, about each other's lives. And there were also a lot of sadness when a team member, had to go down due to height illness. And 50% of our team came up, 50% didn't. And we were all a part of creating success of a personal experience. So personal relationship and knowing and getting to know your peers and friends on a deeper level creates energy.
So that leads us, one of the things that we do in the course, and Peter did this as well, and if you could share this, Eric, the question audit, that first question audit slide, it's like take 24 hours in the next week or two and write down all of the questions. Go to the question audit, please. There we go. No, past that. It's the audit, the other direction. Perfect. That's the first one. Nope, back up one. There we go. Perfect, right there. It's like write down all the questions you ask, all the questions in your head you don't ask, and all the questions other people ask you, because there are probably patterns in your inquiry or mine that are influencing our impact. And here are some dimensions that we invited Peter and others in the course to just reflect on. Like first, what's your Q&A ratio? How many questions do you ask versus answers you give? And am I an ask versus a tell leader? It's a very important dimension. Other things like, where do I start my questions? Most managers start with what and how, what and how, what and how, what and how. And a more powerful starting point, especially in this hybrid working world, is like, who are you and why are you here? Why do you even are part of this? And those are much more important today than the what and how as a starting point. Or your fearless questions, it's the notion of the psychological safety and when do you feel, safe and why. Then if you go to the next one, please, Eric, the next slide. It's like, what's my engagement with AI? We mentioned that at the very beginning today. And is it influencing my questioning patterns? And coming back to where Peter was right there, which was, what questions give me energy? What questions take away energy? And these are often questions that we only ask inside of our own head. Sometimes they get verbalized outside, either verbally or in the actions we take. But I often ask the question, and because of my story, my history is, will I ever measure up in matter? How can I avoid getting hurt? And, those kinds of questions are not really helpful. And another one is, will I ever get it all done? Those are really energy sucking, taking questions that do not give me good energy. And there are other ways of approaching the world, other questions I could be asking, like, what could I do right now to make positive progress on this project? Could be much more helpful than those really energy-taking questions. So, Peter, I know that you kind of alluded to this and mentioned it in some of our conversations so far, but any other further thoughts on how this question auditing process impacted your work and perhaps your life?
I think self-awareness and team awareness, because asking the questions become more knowledgeable, and asking questions about the team members, also about the life stories, you become more knowledgeable of how they might interact in a positive or in a stressful situation. And asking questions about your peaks and valleys in life, as about your valleys, your downturns. In a downturn, if you know a lot of people's other downturns in the team, we know that we have a good foundation to build upon, but because we have done so many mistakes, we had so many downturns, but we have overcome them, and using that strength will help us to the next task that we have in front of us.
Well, it's interesting. We often frame this question audit as an individual activity, but in some ways it's equally powerful for a team. Imagine as a team, either recording a conversation of your team or someone being the auditor and capturing the questions. And then afterwards, really doing a good team examination can be equally powerful, because if we honestly believe that questions are the answer when we're stuck because we are asking the wrong question. If we really believe that questions are the tool to unlock a new door, a new direction, a new path, this kind of an audit basically can help us identify those sticking points and open up possibilities for engaging in a process that would invite better questions to go forward. Any final thoughts, Peter?
I can say that I'm so honored, to be part of this conversation today, and I'm so happy that so many could join to listen in how we can ask questions. And don't forget to be silent, and don't interrupt when someone is, trying to get something out. And as you said, Hal, asking questions is an individual effort and a team effort, on a private and on a professional level. And every question is a good question. Dare to ask them.
Thank you, Peter. And as you were describing that again, I keep thinking, been doing some work with Amy Edmondson around when we individually, and especially with other people, use these tools. In other words, if I not only know my question journey, but yours also, Peter, and if I not only use this question versus myself privately, which is productive, but also we do it together about challenges that each of us care about, Or when, I do the question audit to realize, oh, I'm actually more of a tell than an ask leader, and I've got some work to do here. Or we do it as a team and we realize, actually, the pattern of our questions is not getting us where we want to go. Let's shift from a bunch of what and hows to a little more why and why nots, for example. As we use those tools and make progress on challenges, what Amy and I are realizing and learning is that it also deepens psychological safety. We have a richer sense of trust between us. We're more willing to speak with candor, to ask with candor. And what's really beautiful, at least in my observation with this, is these tools not only help us, but they actually often invite people who rarely speak up to engage more fully with the people around them, either at work or frankly at home. And so, my hunch is you've experienced that as well, Peter.
We'd agree. And also one input here from the chat about having a life-changing situation brings you a new start of life. And that is fully correct. I became a different person 2011 after my accident, when you become so humble that a treasure to be able to say your name and eat your own food. That is a really good thing. And you shouldn't have to be in a life-changing injury or sitting on a burning airplane just to change your life to a positive way with the core thing of how can I help you? Question.
Peter, I think of, as I finish up, again, this Kilimanjaro, it's you, it's your story, it's the Everest of your life and world. I'll never forget the utter exhaustion the day before, the morning of getting into base camp at Everest. I had ascended Kalapatar, which is about 19,000 feet, and watched the sun come up over Everest. And when that happened, realizing that that is the highest physical point on planet Earth to the heavens and the space and the skies beyond, it was that the word that came to my mind was this incredible sense of humility, like, I really am nothing here. It's that deep sense of, wow, I am nothing. And when that happened, I remember walking away and realizing, wow, I want to spend more time building things that last, because I won't. And I think that's what your airplane story said. It's what your accident said. It was Kilimanjaro was speaking. And I think with Peter and the others here at MIT, as well as everyone who's been involved, just a rich, huge, thank you and congratulations, Peter, for not only asking better questions, but living better questions. And you've been an inspiration to me, and I'm sure so many other people. So thank you for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me together with you.
Very welcome.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you, Peter, for really what has been an engrossing 60 minutes. I think we've all been asking ourselves quietly a lot of questions as we've been listening to this conversation. I've been looking in the chat, and people have been so inspired and motivated by Peter, you sharing your story, Hal, by really providing a lot of the contextual perspectives as well, and talking a little bit about the course experience. And I see Eric has shared a slide here with some information about some of Hal's upcoming courses, questions of the answer and inquiry-driven leadership. If people were watching either live or the recording of this webinar and would like to perhaps have some of the kind of learning experience that Peter was reflecting on and the impact that it had on him, then here is your next opportunity to do so. We encourage you to look at those on our website. But really, more than anything, I want to thank you all for joining us from all over the world, and particularly Hal, and even more particularly Peter Åberg, for really just being not only willing to open and share your own journey and experience, but truly being such an amazing human being in person. Let me tell you that if your motivation was to have a positive impact and help other people, then you're really living up to that. And we appreciate that, and we appreciate you. So thank you both so much. And it's just for me to say goodbye to everyone from Cambridge, and we hope to see you all in future online webinars like this, and maybe even some of you in future programs online or on campus would be wonderful as well. So thank you, everyone. And it's goodbye from me, Peter Hurst at the MIT Sloan School of Management.
Thank you, everybody.